Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to those who have joined us from around the world. My name is Olivia Canlis, and I am the National Education Officer at Affirm, zooming in from Canarsie and Lenape land. I welcome you on behalf of our organization, Affirm, which is an anti-imperialist, transnational feminist women's organization. With over a dozen chapters across the US and US colonies, including Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, Bay Area, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Twin Cities, Las Vegas, San Diego, and more. We invited you to the Speak Out tonight to both honor the slain and to present an alternative perspective on the Atlanta killings on Creek land of 8 people, 6 of them who were women of Asian ancestry. We wanted to draw out the historical specificity of femicide and the targeted killing and marginalization of Asian women, immigrant, Asian American, and or foreign nationals in service industries, domestic work, low-wage work, and the sex trade in this country. As a content warning, this webinar will include topics on femicide, racism, war, and sexual violence. The event will be recorded and will be available for use to media with proper attribution to Affirm National. The event will afterwards be translated into Korean, Mandarin, and Spanish. And you'll see that the chat and the Q&A boxes will be open where you can participate, ask panelists questions, and or comment and speak out. A few of the statements will be read aloud prior to the closing of this program. We will have more representatives from Affirm and also our transnational community here tonight. We'll be joined by Mila Kanomis, a poet and Korean adoptee from Atlanta, Georgia, Na-young Kim Pak, feminist attorney from South Korea, Maria Wong, Asian Women for Equality member from Canada, and Affirm National Chair Connie Huynh.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm joining you from Tongva land, and it is with a heavy heart that Affirm condemns the recent murders of mostly Asian women at several Georgia massage establishments. 8 people were killed last Tuesday night. 6 of them were Asian women, and 4 of the women were Korean nationals. Under the current system, militarized patriarchy consists of both state and non-state actors alike who are sanctioned to brutally objectify and commodify women's bodies for pleasure and profit. Regardless of motive, the state is proving that it will act to protect non-state actors even when they target our sisters in cold blood. 1 week later, Georgia officials have yet to declare this as a racially motivated hate crime. And we know that they will not acknowledge the misogyny. So here we are to call for our own justice, to remember the fallen in Atlanta and across the US who have died, and to name the femicide. We point to the killings of 3 Hmong women just this past weekend, including Bao Yang, 39-year-old mother of 2 sons killed in St. Paul, Minnesota. Mai Rui Lily Vong, 30 years old, the mother of 4 children, ages 7 months to 13 years old, in Wausau, Wisconsin. Sia Marie Chong, 28-year-old mother to a 3-year-old child who was killed here in Los Angeles. No one gets to kill women in our Asian and Asian American communities. Not the police, not the military, not the state, not white supremacists, not even our own family members and partners. We welcome you today and thank you for joining us in our collective grieving, our collective rage, and our demands for justice.
Thank you, Connie. So we'll begin the program by sharing the faces of those killed in the Atlanta shooting and the Hmong woman killed across the country this past weekend. Thank you to Riha Majid, who put together the video, and Skylar Perez Grogan, who is running the tech. We know that the faces and stories that we share are one of many, as femicide or sex-based and gender-based killing is endemic across the world. Afterwards, we'll hear from Nayoung and Johanna, who will read the names of the slain aloud. We'll take a moment of silence for 8 seconds, and we'll punctuate that with a bell. The 8 seconds will represent the 8 killed in Atlanta. And then Johanna Smith, Alexandra Balgos, and Denise Castillo will read excerpted statements from family members that have been made available publicly. So if we could start with Nayoung.
Park Sun-jung, 74 years old. Yu Yong-ae, 63 years old. Kim Hyun-jung, 51 years old.
Son of Hyun-jung Kim remembered. She was quite literally the only thing keeping us running, calling us every night to check up on us before she goes to bed, working however long for us that she needed to. I've been sheltered and taken care of my whole life, and now I have to do the same for my brother. I believe 2 of the locations were next to each other down the street, and the other one was in some other county, like a drive away. If you blame it on sex addiction, but you choose to target specifically Asian locations, and the victims being mostly of Asian descent, I can't help but ask, does that make sense? No, of course not.
Kim Sun-ja, 69 years old.
Son Choi Kim's granddaughter remembers. This unsettling has caused my family and I an immense amount of pain. Our world is forever shattered and tainted with of Mr. Love. As an immigrant, all my grandmother ever wanted in life was to grow old with my grandfather and watch her children and grandchildren live the life she never got to live. She represented everything I wanted to be as a woman, without an ounce of hate or bitterness in her heart. People that were close to me knew that my grandmother was my rock. To have her taken away as a perfectly healthy elderly woman by such a heinous crime broke my heart. I will never see her again, but I am left with only happy memories of her and the beautiful life she lived. She never forgot to call me once a week to say, "Stay strong in life. When you're happy, I'm happy."
Paul Andre Michels, 54 years old. Feng Daoyou, 44 years old. Tan Xiaojie, 49 years old. Her daughter, Jamie Webb, remembers. She worked every day, 12 hours a day, so that me and our family would have a better life. Delana Ashley Yon, 33 years old. Her sister, Dana Toole, remembers. Her family came first. Everything was her family. She has such a wonderful, happy, upbeat personality. She was a good person. She didn't deserve that. Nobody deserved it. There's nothing anyone could do to help with the pain.
And now Alexandra is going to read a statement posted by Angel B. Lee on Instagram.
A close friend of mine, a fellow Korean American with immigrant parents, had a father who abused her mother. I remember that they didn't speak English, but her mother was always so sweet and treated me to free gifts from their shop. Later, her father left the family, leaving her mother desperate to find work. With not a lot of options and 2 children to support, she later found work and moved to Atlanta. Tragically, she ended up getting trafficked and working against her will at a massage parlor.
There were other women kidnapped and trafficked that worked with her, conditions too painful to describe in this post. Years later, and after many hardships, my friend was later able to buy her mother back and bring her home. Today, I found out that her mother knew the 6 women murdered during yesterday's shooting because she worked at the very same spa in Atlanta. These women were already suffering prior to being murdered. And while their death is representing a larger debate and outcry against Asian racial injustice, I can't help but feel so much sorrow for their personal stories and to be reminded that there's so much more beyond the news posts. The injustice began much sooner. To the 6 women, rest in peace. And now for the last 8 seconds, we invite you to say the name of someone you would like to honor out loud and pause for the victims of femicide, some whose faces, names, and stories we will never know.
So hopefully that space, even though we're apart digitally or physically, provided a collective 8 seconds of silence for each of the slain in collective community. As feminists, we know we cannot remain silent to femicide. So we'll start our speak out with Mila Konomis, an Atlanta-based Korean adoptee poet, artist, and activist. Her work frames transnational, transracial adoption within its broader geopolitical context of imperialism, invasion, and colonialism.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I'm very grateful to be here and honored to be here in this space with all of you. As Olivia said, my name is Mila Konomis, and I'm a poet, artist, and activist here in Atlanta. And I'm also a Korean adoptee who was forcibly separated from my oma through transracial, transnational adoption that I see as a tool of imperialism and colonialism that perpetrates racial, cultural, and familial erasure. I also live 7 miles from the site of the shootings that happened in Atlanta. And last Tuesday night, I could not sleep. So I sat in the dark writing as a way to express what I was feeling in a safe and healthy way. Sorry, I'm feeling very emotional. And from all of the rage and the grief and the pain, poured out this poem that I'm going to share with you. The poem is called, "Do You See Now?" This isn't the first time. But how many times, over how many generations, before you see that this isn't the first time? How many hundreds of years? How many millions of lives? Until you see. Do you see? Do you see now? No such thing as a model minority. Do you see now? All the blood covering your American dream. Now, do you see we're tokens and trophies until we're targets and scapegoats for the rage and the hate of a nation where our skin is not white enough. Our skin is not brown enough. Our pain doesn't hurt enough for anyone to care enough. So we hide. We lay down, we lay low. Erase ourselves until we are invisible shadows of pleasure and bodies of commodity under the pressure to be everything to everyone. Swallow dignity, no room for self-pity. We eat silence and secrets, absorb violence and tragedy. Centuries of wars and thieves, laws and policies, sanctioning atrocities to rid the earth of yellow peril and perpetual foreigners, except when we're constructing your railroads or farming your sugarcane, comforting your soldiers, birthing babies for your white mothers, pawns serving in your empires. You think I'm here because I wanted to be? I'm here because no one wanted me, but only to fulfill their dreams, build their dreams, scream their dreams. In my bed at night, my daughter at my side. Hold her close, hold her tight. Pray and whisper, I'm raising her right, so she can see no such thing as a model minority, so she can see no such thing as an American dream. I rise, I weep, I fight, hoping she won't ever have to see her own blood covering your American dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Mila. You have a powerful voice, and thank you for trusting this space to share your experience growing up as a direct product of imperialism and colonialism. Next is Maria Wong, a first-generation born in Canada of Chinese descent and Asian Women for Equality member. Which is a grassroots feminist organization that changes societal attitudes towards and advances equality for women, especially women of Asian descent.
Thank you. I'll start reading from our group statement. On March 16th, 2021, a white gunman went to 3 Asian-themed massage parlors in Atlanta, Georgia. He shot 8 people, 6 were Asian women, and described being motivated by a desire to eliminate temptation for his sexual addictions. Asian Women for Equality stands in solidarity with our Asian American sisters. We condemn the misogynist racism that has fueled white men's violence against us and condemn the sex industry that creates the conditions for men to violate us. Since the declaration of the COVID-19 pandemic, Asians have been increasingly targeted for violence, but anti-Asian racism is not new. Asian people have long been portrayed as dangerous cultural threat to Western society. Specifically, Asian women are fetishized as being submissive, exotic, sexually available, and our bodies are used, commodified, and trafficked for profit and men's sexual pleasure. Arising in part from a history of exploitation, war, and imperialism, these harmful stereotypes of Asian women are embedded in the expectations and beliefs of white male sex buyers. Prostitution teaches men that they can override our consent, our ability to say no to unwanted sexual activity. Prostitution encourages men to demand racist sexual experiences with Asian women, and the sex industry preys on women, specifically women of color and poor women. We want to end racism and sexism, and we want to end the systems that perpetuate racism and sexism. We want to live without fear of racist violence, sexist violence, and poverty. End sexism, racism against Asian women, end prostitution, a system of racism and sexism against Asian women, and justice and freedom for Asian women now. Asian Women for Equality is a grassroots feminist group that works as a progressive force to change societal attitudes towards women. Our membership represents a large range of experiences common to Asian women, including prostituted women, immigrants, nationalized Canadians, permanent residents, temporary residents, foreign students, and Canadian-born offspring of Asian immigrants to Canada. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed and deepened the inequalities faced by women of color, doing the jobs considered essential services with meager wages and poor employment conditions. Women's hardships under coronavirus have been further exacerbated by increasing men's ability to commit violence, increasing women's poverty, and increasing the burden of caretaking responsibilities that are so often placed on women. Last year, we were alarmed to see the strip clubs among the services and sectors that city councils in Vancouver and Montreal were allowed to reopen. Not surprisingly, a number of positive COVID tests resulted. We see in our own municipal governments that undermine women's ability to maintain our health and social distancing for the sake of men's entertainment. In 2013, a lawyer and professor of law mounted a legal case to remove criminal sanctions against the buying and selling of women for sex. The case was eventually heard by the Supreme Court of Canada. The decision would have a direct impact on Asian women's right to self-determination. We intervened to argue why women should not be criminalized for selling sex, but to criminalize the male buyers and pimps women in the sex industry. We argued that normalizing prostitution in work and in our lives also normalizes the sexism and racism inherent in the sex trade. We also reminded the court and our policymakers that laws don't kill women. Men kill women. In 2014, the Canadian government decided to decriminalize women in prostitution and kept the laws in place for buyers and brothel owners. Nevertheless, many police departments in Canada have refused to enforce these laws, and we seek to stop men from controlling the demand and commercialization of Asian women. We have found it increasingly necessary to expose the sexism and racism inherent in the sex industry that targets Asian women in Canada. This sexualized racism is rooted in our history. The myth of the Asian woman, whether meek or subservient, or exotic or hypersexual, comes from the conquest based on sex and race and the history of Western imperialism. From the conquests of Western men in military bases in Asia, to the mail order brides to exchange citizenship for slavery within marriage. In Canada, an overwhelming portion of online advertising is for Asian women. We've seen the print adult service listings to profit by as much as $75,000 a week. The word Asian is the most common race-related word using as a selling factor, and other popular phrases such as submissive, exotic, newly immigrated, and fresh off the boat. We know that massage parlors are ordinary in the landscape of most cities now. Many of our establishments are run as legitimate businesses, sometimes as health enhancement centers licensed by municipal governments. In 2006, from a rate of 18 massage parlors in BC, they found that over 90% of women working in there were Asian women. We also know that pornography influences male buyers and commercialization of Asian women. In 2019, Pornhub's top 10 most commonly searched terms include Japanese, hentai, Korean, Asian, massage, as racist stereotypes outrank everything else. Legal entities in the sex industry have not ceased men's growing demand and sexual objectification of women. We as Asian women know the inherent contradiction and hypocrisy of the sex industry. Prostitution is not simply compatible with sexual and racial equality. Legalizing the sex industry for male buyers and pimps would not have prevented the murders in Atlanta. Saying no to men's sexual demands, giving women viable alternatives to exit the sex trade could be a start to true liberation. We advocate to enforce the current laws that stop the demand of male buyers and pimps. We advocate for full expungement of criminal records for women in prostitution. We advocate for guaranteed livable income and full economic independence for women. And we advocate for landed status for women working in Canada. We continue to join in solidarity with Asian women and women's groups around the world who are organizing to challenge all forms of misogyny, racism, and classism. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Asian Women for Equality has done incredible and groundbreaking work, especially around the decriminalization of prostituted women in Canada. So we look forward to more opportunities of collaboration. Before we go to the next speaker, I wanted to prompt Skylar to play the video of the slain women. So again, we constantly wanted to run the faces and names throughout the program today so that we can constantly reground, remember, and figure out ways to resist and fight back. Up next, we have Nayoung Kim Pak. She is a feminist activist, a writer, and attorney from Seoul, Korea.
Thank you, Olivia. I understand the Atlanta massacre as an instance of femicide. The killing of females by males because they are female, as defined by the late South African-born feminist activist, Dr. Diana Russell. Femicide is an extreme form of the global and ancient institution of male violence against women, which includes domestic violence, rape, sexual harassment, prostitution, and pornography. The institution of male violence against women rests upon misogyny or woman hating and sex equality as its ideology and organizing principle. The logic of any hierarchy or inequality necessitates that the superior exert power and control over the inferior, otherwise there would be no hierarchy. Violence can take many different forms like physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, economic violence, political violence, and so on. But what it boils down to is that the perpetrator exerts power and control over the victim in some way. Murder is the ultimate form of violence, the ultimate form of power and control. The murderer acts out the ideology that one is so superior to the other, that one is entitled to decide whether the other lives or dies, when, where, and in what manner. Specifically, I understand the Atlanta massacre as an instance of white men's racist femicide of immigrant proletariat women, whose only possessions of significant economic value are their bodily being and labor, the demand for, perception of, and conditions surrounding which are shaped by rich white male power. How has rich white male power shaped society, and what is the place reserved for immigrant proletariat women of color in it? Today, I am talking about America, not with a C, but with 3 Ks, like America KKKA. But I am also talking about every other empire like it and every other state that wishes to be like it. America's rich white male rulers ordered their troops to wreak havoc in other lands in their quest for dominance in global geopolitics, and they deprived entire nations of their wealth, peace, and dignity. Generations of people from such nations have needed to leave their home, some because they were no longer safe there, some because they were taken against their will, and others because they dreamt of a better future for themselves and their children. Rich white male rulers in America, ever since they massacred the thousands of indigenous peoples and stole their land, have spent centuries greedily and obsessively guarding this land and all the wealth that flows from it for themselves with their laws, their weapons, and every single aspect of the social structure they built and control. This same group of rich white males enslaved millions of human beings for their profit, forming a legacy and culture of exploiting, raping, and murdering people who do not look like them. Maybe it's because this country was built on so much devaluation, destruction, and dehumanization of so many people. It's ridiculous, really, but it is the largest, richest, most powerful empire in the world, and it cannot even value its population enough to provide them with basic necessities for survival, like healthcare, education, housing, and food. Then there is the sexual thingification of women, including the racist sexual dehumanization of women of color in pornography, which literally means graphic representation of sexually enslaved women. A lot of pornography is actually scenes from the sex trade through a camera lens. Where do we think white men's racist misogyny, sexual objectification, and fetishization of Asian women even come from? Do we really believe that white male babies are born with such hatred of us? Just type in Asian women in any internet pornography website. Korean, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, Thai, you name it, they have it. Real Asian women rope-bound, hanging from a hook, hanging from a tree, Asian women being tortured, strangled, beaten, weeping, screaming in pain, bleeding. When survivors rose up and told the truth about pornography made of them, when they declared that the pornography violated their civil rights as equal human beings, rich white male liberals in America mobilized to call it free speech so that they could continue to pleasure from the sexual dehumanization of women so that they could continue to share the profits of the global sex trade. Rich white males created and maintained the economic, political, and cultural conditions for the intersectional powerlessness and lack of freedom of all women, including Asian immigrant women. The gross income inequality in this country ensures that there will always be a supply of impoverished, disenfranchised, and isolated Asian immigrant women who are deprived of any other viable option except enduring exploitation of and violence against them to survive. Note how no immigrant proletariat woman of color in the history of the world has had any choice but to try to survive in this freedom depriving, unequal, and exploitative conditions. The 6 Asian immigrant women who were murdered by Robert Aaron Long represent some of the most oppressed, most disenfranchised, most unequal, and most unfree in America. Now, the dead cannot tell us what the minutes, the hours, the days, the weeks, the years leading up to their deaths were like. We do not know. But it is not unreasonable for us to imagine that theirs must not have been easy, carefree, sheltered, privileged lives, free from violence, even before the white man's bullets found them. Without white male supremacy's obsession with systematically depriving, diminishing, and dehumanizing Asian women, without its command and demand for Asian women to exist as their sexual objects, without its murderous violence against them, where would the 6 women be? What would they be doing now? Maybe they would be daydreaming of one day becoming a homeowner. Maybe they would be saving up for a visit back home to Korea. Maybe they would be working towards a GED to finally achieve a childhood dream. Maybe they would be preparing a nice meal for a grandchild. Sisters, I think about the task before us. We know there is a monster coming after us, hurting and destroying our own. It thirsts for our blood. It will not stop until it devours our last woman standing. This monster has not just one, but many heads, one of them being race inequality, another being sex inequality, class inequality, and so on. Trying to cut off just one head, we will not succeed in vanquishing this monster because its heads are so entwined and they sustain and revive one another. It is truly a fiendish enemy because it is at once here and there, everywhere. One can never be safe from it anywhere in the entire world. And it does not lay dormant or die a natural death. It's been around for so long, it feels like it's been here since the Big Bang. But you know what Gerda Lerner said? Patriarchy has a beginning and it will have an end. Do we believe her? Whether we do or not, we need to will ourselves to give birth to that end. We need to be the organized resistance to every kind of oppression that tramples any woman, even just one. But enough of all this talking and political grandstanding from me now. We must get to work. I am speaking to you, my transnational feminist sisters across the globe. A good place to start is with the immigrant working women of color, wherever you are. Find them, huddle together with them, keep each other safe, do whatever you need to do to lift this group up, not just a few lucky, exceptional, and prominent individuals from this group, but the entire group. No woman gets left behind. Get this group of women where whatever they need from you, from your community, from your state, and from the world outside your state, whatever that would free them and you from having to submit to some man's dehumanizing use of us, from being in harm's way, from hatred, from poverty, from exploitation, from male violence, from state violence, from war, from anything unnatural that would rob us of our one wild and precious life. Thank you.
Wow, Nayang, I have chills, and I'm sure everyone else that is listening also does too. Understanding racialized femicide as a systemic issue and the need to attack this from a global perspective is so critical. So thank you for joining this panel. Next, I would like to introduce or reintroduce Connie Huynh, the Affirm National Chair and Healthcare for All Campaign Director at People's Action, where she leads organizing to disrupt state-sanctioned patriarchal violence in industries that disproportionately harm women of color's health, lives, and bodies for profit.
Thank you, Olivia, and definitely agree. In the same breath that we declare we need to stop Asian hate, we must demand an end to femicide, and we must name the misogyny. You all, this issue hits very close to home for Affirm. Beyond the scrutiny of our lived experiences in this country that we're going through right now, Affirm organized for 2 years to end police raids in our county's massage businesses through our Survivors Not Criminals campaign. For folks who may not know, we have a booming massage industry here in Los Angeles. Massage business licenses are by far the most common new business license issued in our county. And while not all massage places are venues for the sex trade and trafficking, it is noteworthy that our massage industry is actually growing faster than our restaurant, entertainment, and other industries. So while LA County sought to, institute these Department of Public Health inspections, and those are, a public good, the criminalization of women and girls at massage businesses are obviously not. And that is why Affirm led organizing in our community to end the failed practice of police raids, to call for survivor-centered responses and services. And what our community won here shows that we can transition away from criminalization of people in the sex trade. But what the murders in the Atlanta area remind us is that we still live under patriarchy. Ending police raids everywhere would not have saved the lives of the 8 people who died last Tuesday. It is clear who the police protect, and it ain't us. It was the police who rushed to the aid of the murderer. It is the police and authorities who won't even name that it was a hate crime or gender-based violence, despite the obvious. So what is at issue here is the commodification of women and feminized bodies. Our dehumanization is a tool, and it's deadly. My family's homeland is in Vietnam, where my father fought in a war and was imprisoned for 4 years to aid US imperialism. My grandmother thought she had lost her eldest son and didn't even recognize him when he returned home, malnourished and full of trauma. And the reason for his release was that the Vietnamese government feared retribution from another imperialist power, China, where my grandfather is from. The same war my father fought in was the war that created and expanded the sex trade in our homelands. By the end of the war, there were 500,000 women in Vietnam in the sex trade. And some would call this a form of, quote, work, but for most, it's not a job like any other. And one Saigon official even referred to prostitution in Vietnam as, quote, an inexhaustible source of US dollars for the state. The conditions that create and expand the sex trade are designed to destabilize the livelihoods of women and girls so that they enter for economic survival. That same war is what led to the boom of what were officially recognized by international governments as rest and recreation areas. That happened in nearby Thailand, which we all know is also well known for its sex tourism industry today. US military expansion in Asia has not only led to the increased destabilization of local economies, which resulted in the expansion of the sex trade, but it's resulted in decades-long, unbroken exodus of thousands of women from their home countries. And in many cases, women are trafficked straight into the empire's belly, right here in the US. And a significant percentage of Asian women living in the US face socioeconomic hardships, which are exacerbated by the fetishizing and racist tropes that are hurled at them, at us, on a daily basis. So what we're witnessing results from the fetishization of Asian women. And Affirm is grieving this horrifying display. We are grieving this horrifying display of a militarized patriarchy. These murders pierce deeply during Women's History Month, a time when women around the world rise up to demand an end to the violence against us. But we must be clear that the sexualization of women of color is not a women's issue. The treatment of our bodies as property to be taken, used, or disposed of holds patriarchal capitalism at its core. We are all here because we have a common interest in fighting all racism and male supremacy, the root causes that perpetuate our collective suffering. We know that the sex trade is a multi-billion-dollar industry that profits off the commodification and fetishization of women like us and our relatives. And we're not going to cede this terrain on this issue. We will not cede our bodies. We will not cede our homelands to capitalists nor capitalist states. We are here today because our ancestors fought for our existence. And that is why we're here tonight, to not only name and grieve the devastating losses in our community, we're collectivizing our grief and also our power so that we can continue to organize. Because we know that there is great joy and strength in the here and now when we are here for each other.
Thank you, Connie, for sharing how women in Los Angeles have fought back against misogyny, massage parlors, and organizing to really center survivors. And the role, of course, that imperialist wars have in expanding the sex trade. So before we close out, I just wanted to put out a final call for people to submit any questions for the panelists and or statements that they would like to have read aloud. Vale's closing, which I will hand off to her. She is the National Program Coordinator at Affirm. Valeria Espinosa.
Thank you, Olivia. Before we close out for the evening, I do want to take a moment to check in with ourselves. So let's just pause for a short second, take a breath. And so what you're feeling now, know that it is completely valid. Allow yourself to feel it, process, and reflect. And in doing so, we can channel that rage and grief into political rage and action. We can use it to build power that works toward our collective liberation, a world we envision where we can come together in celebration and not in mourning of another fallen sister. Ask yourself, what does a world without violence against women look like to you? Let's envision that and move forward with our freedom dreams. We must answer this call to action because, sisters, we will win. So before we end the event, I have a couple of announcements. We do want to highlight that there is an ongoing fundraiser for the families of the victims. So there are a couple of GoFundMes. There's a couple of GoFundMes where you, if you're interested in donating, if you can, they'll be on the screen in just a second. If we can't get those up, then that's okay. We can post them on all of our social media pages. And so you could follow us and then get all the necessary information. We also, well, beyond that, for the women who are in Atlanta or in any of the following cities listed below, if you're interested in joining Affirm, contact organizing@affirm.org. And we have a graphic coming up where we have current chapters and organizing committees that are being started up. Give us a second. And we also invite you to our next event, which is this Thursday, hosted by Affirm LA and Twin Cities chapters. And this is featuring a conversation between transnational and incredible Indigenous feminists on a related topic. It is on the intersection of MMIW G2S and the sex trade. And so for more information, you can just, again, follow Affirm on all of our social media platforms. And so I just want to go ahead and thank our speakers, Maria, Mila, Nayang, and Connie. Thank you to our planning committees. Thank you to everyone who joined tonight to honor those lost last week. We're going to keep looking forward. Have a great evening, and we will see you all on the front lines. Thank you, everyone.